a man wrongly deported to El Salvador, a Supreme Court ruling, and a defiant administration. This is a story that intertwines human rights, legal battles, and political defiance, all centered around one man's fight for justice. The Kilmar Abrego Garcia case is not just another immigration story. It's a case that has sparked outrage, debate, and a closer look at how the U.S. government handles its legal obligations. Garcia's story begins with a childhood escape from violence. Leaving El Salvador at just 7 years old, he sought refuge in the United States, a country that promised safety and opportunity. But in 2019, his life took a devastating turn. He was deported back to El Salvador based on allegations of gang affiliation. Allegations that were heavily disputed and lacked substantial evidence. The Supreme Court, in a landmark ruling, determined that Garcia's deportation was not only unjust, but also a violation of his rights. They ordered the U.S. government to bring him back, a decision that should have been straightforward. However, the Trump administration's response has been anything but straightforward. Instead of complying with the court's ruling, they've chosen to interpret the order in a way that critics say undermines its very intent. Garcia's deportation was initially halted by a lower court, which granted him protection. But an alleged administrative error by ICE led to his removal anyway, a mistake that has had life-altering consequences for Garcia. Now, in April 2025, the Supreme Court has once again stepped in, issuing a unanimous ruling that Garcia must be returned to the United States. This should have been the end of the story, but it's far from over. The Trump administration, led by officials like Stephen Miller, has taken a controversial stance. They argue that the court's order to facilitate Garcia's return only requires them to provide transportation, leaving the rest to El Salvador. This narrow interpretation has sparked outrage among legal experts and human rights advocates, who argue that it blatantly disregards the court's intent to ensure Garcia's safety and justice. Critics point out that this approach not only endangers Garcia's life, but also sets a dangerous precedent for how judicial rulings are respected or ignored by the executive branch. Garcia's situation in El Salvador is dire. The country's ongoing gang violence and instability make it one of the most dangerous places in the world, particularly for someone who has been publicly associated with a high-profile legal case. This case is about more than just one man. It's a reflection of the broader struggle between the judiciary and the executive branch, a struggle that has far-reaching implications for the rule of law in the United States. Why does this matter? Because when a government chooses to defy its own courts, it undermines the very foundation of democracy. Garcia's case is a test of whether the rule of law can prevail in the face of political resistance. Garcia's safety is at immediate risk, but the stakes are even higher. This case could determine how future administrations handle judicial rulings they disagree with, potentially reshaping the balance of power in the U.S. government. Legal experts warn that if the administration's defiance goes unchecked, it could embolden future leaders to disregard court orders, eroding the separation of powers that is central to the U.S. Constitution. As protests grow and legal battles continue, the world is watching. Will the U.S. government uphold its commitment to justice, or will it allow political agendas to override the rule of law? Garcia's fate hangs in the balance, but so does the integrity of the U.S. judicial system. This case is more than a legal battle. It's a fight for the soul of American democracy.